Thanks for staying with us here on Missouri Viewpoints. I'm Mike Ferguson. There's no such thing as a free lunch, or in this case, a free education. Somebody has to pay for public schools, and the schools say they need more money. Raising taxes to give it to them generally is not a popular idea, at least statewide, as we saw this past November. So how can we fund public schools properly and give your child the education they need with the money that we do have? James Shuls is with the Show Me Institute. James, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me.
And of course, we just visited with Amy Bluen from the Missouri Budget Project, which you all find yourself on the opposite side of issues more times than you don't. And one of the cases that Amy was making is that we simply don't have enough money right now to fund what public schools say they need funded, and therefore their position was that we need to find new revenues to make up the shortfall. Is that an assessment that you would agree with?
Well, kind of. So first let me say that she's right in saying public schools say they don't have enough money. That's absolutely true. And it's also true to say that the state funding foundation formula is currently underfunded. What's not true is that we're spending less now on education than we have been in the past, or that we have some sort of huge decrease in education funding. In real dollars, we've actually increased funding this year from last year. The problem is with the foundation formula, we've been phasing it in over a number of years. From last year to this year, we went from 85% of the foundation formula to 100% of the foundation formula. At the same time, the state sets an adequacy target. That increased this year as well. So those two things alone led to the budget shortfall that we have now. And of course, schools are going to play on that and say that we need more money. But the truth of the matter is we're doing a pretty good job of funding schools. And it isn't that we need to increase funding. It's that we really need to rethink how we're running or operating our schools. From 1992 to 2008, in real dollars, inflation adjusted dollars, we increased education funding by 40%. And our attainment levels and achievement have remained flat. So we can keep giving as much money as we want, but we're not seeing the increases in student achievement. So we really need to start changing the dynamic and rethinking public education, because we can't just keep increasing spending, not at the rate that schools want us to, at least.
Let's talk about that aspect of it as far as running the schools, whether it's becoming more efficient or getting better use out of the dollars. What would be some things that you would like to see local school districts do to more efficiently use the dollars that they do have? Or are there changes at the statewide level that need to be made in order to accomplish the same thing? Right,
both. There are things that the school districts can do, and there are things that the state needs to do as well. And for one, the state needs to give school districts more ability to be innovative, to have the authority to make the changes that they need to make as they see them on the ground. I think that too often the state hamstrings schools from making those important staffing decisions. And some of those staffing decisions are determined by local board policy. I think school districts need to have more power over their compensation system so they can really reward those great teachers, attract and retain great teachers, and do a better job of getting rid of the lower performing teachers so they can improve the overall quality of education. Another thing, sorry, you wanted to?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say another thing they could do is really start trying to do more blended learning, trying to incorporate technology a little bit more, and utilize the power of technology. We really have seen great advances in technology in so many fields, but education is one of those fields where if you walk into a classroom, it looks much today like it did many years ago.
Now, are you talking about things like virtual schools?
Well, virtual schools is one part of it, and Missouri does have a very good virtual program that's underutilized in my opinion. But there are more things than that. There are blended learning models where some schools are starting to adopt them with remarkable success, where students are working on computer adaptive programs. And they're working on those at their own level, while teachers are pulling small groups, and they can have a larger class size because they have students engaged doing computer activities. They're really targeted at them, while the teacher is pulling small groups and working on specific skills. And so really rethinking how we do public education, I think, could have dramatic results in improving student achievement.
Okay, let's talk to the parents who are listening or watching right now on this program. And we do know that many school districts are laying off teachers, they're laying off staff, and they are cutting some academic programs under the current model right now. So somebody's got a child in a school district, whether it's grade school or high school, and they're hearing you talk about the blended learning models, they're hearing you talk about the funding is sufficient, and their school board tells them it's not. Their school board tells them they need to raise taxes somewhere along the line. School board tells them the state needs to give them more money. The school board tells them that they are going to have to cut programs because there isn't enough money. So the parents are hearing this, and the parents want to know, what does this mean to them? If the school districts look at blended learning, virtual elements, what does this mean to them as a taxpayer? What does this mean to them as a parent who just wants their kid to get a good education?
Well, let me first say that some of those things I think are scare tactics. So we hear that there are layoffs. We hear that there are all kinds of travesties happening in the public schools where we're cutting all kinds of programs. A lot of that comes from surveys. If you survey a school district and say, you know, the budget's a little tight this year, what are you going to do? They're going to say, we're laying off teachers. When you look at the real numbers, when you look at what they actually do, we don't see those things panning out as much in the data. There have been some decreases in the number of teachers in the state. We've also had decreasing enrollment in the state. And if you look at the actual classrooms or students per teacher, it's been 13 to 1. 13 students per one teacher in our public schools for the past 5 years, remaining almost constant. So for one, those things are a bit of scare tactics, and I like to point out the example of trailers. You know, when a district runs out of space, they always find the place closest to the road to put the trailer, so that you know that they had to put a trailer in. They could have put it someplace behind the school or some other place, but they always put it up front. And oftentimes school districts do these types of things to make people aware that there are budget problems. And don't get me wrong, I understand districts have all kinds of budget problems. But the answer can't always be more. It can't always be, we need more money, more money, more money. And there are times when we do need more money, sure. But there are also times we need to start, like I said, rethinking how we do these things. And so we talk about blended learning, some of these other models. I'm talking about real cost-saving opportunities. Opportunities for us to change the dynamic in how we deliver education so it's more personalized, it's more targeted, and it really focuses on the individual child, allowing them to make learning gains at a rate that they're more comfortable with. And so I think that the blended learning models and these other models I'm talking about really have the opportunity to make education more personalized.
Okay, we've talked about then just now the impact maybe on the families and the students. Let's talk about the long-term impact on the state, you know, whether it's the economy, whether it's our culture, whether it's our community. Public education impacts basically everything else in the state. If the system, if the funding, if something's not changed, what is the long-term impact we can expect?
Well, I mean, right now, the funding problem as we see it, it depends on who you talk to. There are lots of funding problems depending on the person's point of view. Right now, we're spending about 36 or 35% of the state general revenue on education. It's a pretty good chunk. It's $9,600 per student on average. So, I mean, I was a classroom teacher. I taught first grade, I taught fifth grade, and imagine if I had 25 students, I had $9,600 per student walking into my classroom. That's $240,000. I think I could do a lot of good things with that money. I really think that if you gave me $240,000 and said, here are 25 students, educate these students, I could do a wonderful job. I could hire an aide, I could pay myself a handsome salary, I could do great things. So we need to move this dynamic that it's not really a funding issue that we have, it's that we've been tied to an old antiquated model that's not producing results. And by continually pumping money into it, we're not going to get different results. I mean, the illustration I told you earlier about us increasing spending by 40% from '92 to 2008, you could see that at the national level, except the numbers are much bigger. We can't just keep giving extra money. We need to change the dynamic. We need to give parents more options. We need to allow them to choose the school that they want to send their child to. And by giving them the power, giving them the accountability, and making education more personalized to the individual student, that's how we're going to see real results. And we're going to see more educated workforce, which is what we all want. So well, not just an educated workforce, we want educated people, educated citizens. So
you're talking about a more or less a marketplace, a competition in education. That's a concept that kind of makes people nervous sometimes. They say schools aren't businesses. We can't risk failure, you know, with a business model that doesn't compete well. Are we talking about a marketplace and a competition in schools? Because that is something that for a lot of people is just kind of antithetical to the way they've thought about education for years.
Well, right now we treat students as funding units. You know, school districts treat kids as funding units. Parents don't have kids so that their school district could have money. We have kids because we love them. We have kids because we want more kids. And we want what's best for our kids. And so when I talk about school choice, some people try to frame it as, just letting the market work. But what we're talking about is giving kids options, giving parents choices where to send their kids. And really you have two different types of systems. You have a system where the state sets the accountability for the school district and says you must achieve at this level. As we've seen in Kansas City and St. Louis, that doesn't work very well. We've been trying that for many years now. We're not getting great results. So what I'm talking about is giving parents the accountability, letting parents choose where to send their kids to school and choose what's best for their kids. And we're talking about options for families. So some people will try to phrase it in scary language, but what we're talking about is giving people options.
And what would that look like? Would that look like vouchers? Would that look like free cross-enrollment? Would that look like, what would that look like as far as giving the parents that choice and that accountability?
Yeah, I think vouchers are an interesting option. We have some obstacles to vouchers in Missouri. Giving parents inter-district choice options, I think, is a great option. One thing I'm really excited about is education savings accounts. This is something new that just started in Arizona. And basically what the state does is if you leave the public school and you enroll in you want to go to a private school or you want to homeschool your kid, you can have a savings account, much like a health savings account, where the state takes a portion of the funds they were giving to the school, they put it into a savings account. And then you have the power to use that money to go and purchase educational services, extra tutoring, to purchase supplies for school, to pay tuition, and whatever money you don't spend, then you retain in your account, you could use later, you could use for college, you could use it in a number of different educational ways. And so when you give parents that ability, you see that people make wise choices because they have ownership of that money. And so that's a really interesting idea that I'm really looking forward to seeing where that goes. But any type of option that gives parents more choices, that give parents more options to do what they think is best for their kids is, I think, the right way to move.
Now, my daughter goes to a parochial school, and those who I've spoken with, not just at her school but others, they say, we don't want a penny of voucher money. We don't want anything like that because we're worried about the state coming in and running our curriculum because there are strings attached. Mm-hmm. Can you have both a voucher type setup, an alternative type of funding, and academic freedom to let that marketplace work?
Well, I think you certainly can. And I think we're seeing some of that in other places, in other cities where they have voucher type programs or tuition tax credits. It gets back to that dynamic that I was explaining earlier about having the accountability set at the state level are really set by parents. And if we create a system of choice where we allow parents to be the mechanism where we provide accountability, you certainly could have that, because school choice isn't going to really make a difference if we say you can go to McDonald's here or McDonald's there. Hope I'm allowed to say McDonald's. Hope that's okay.
You can say McDonald's all you want. Yep.
I had a kid in a public school a couple years ago. We had all kinds of problems with the public school, and I met with the principal and the assistant principal, district math specialist, and I was unhappy with how my kid was being served. And I didn't like the way that they were teaching math. And the district math specialist said to me, I could tell you're not satisfied here. And I said, you're right. I said, where else could I go in the district? This is a district with 20-something elementary schools. I said, where else could I go in the district where they're not teaching math in this way? She said, nowhere. They all teach math this way. And so I would hate to see a system where every school is doing the exact same thing. The real beauty of school choice is that parents can choose from a number of different options that are doing things differently. And so if we create a voucher system or a tuition tax credit system or education savings account system that's heavy-handed from the state and trying to control private schools, that wouldn't be a great win for the citizens. But if we can create a system where we really enable parents to choose and allow schools, both public and private, to innovate, I think that's where the parents and the students are real winners.
Okay, James Shuls from the Show Me Institute. Somebody wants to learn more about your work on education. Where do they go to find out more?
Well, they can go to showmeinstitute.org, or they can follow us on the blog at showmedaily.org.
All right, James, thank you so much for coming by today.